Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, How to Focus on Mental Health at Work, brought to you by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association. I'm Kelsey Campbell, and I serve as the Assistant Director for Campus Engagement in the Alumni Engagement Office, and we are thrilled to have you join today. We will give everyone a minute or so to log on, and in the meantime, I want to provide you all with some details about today's webinar. This webinar will last about 45 minutes, and there will be an opportunity for a Q&A towards the end of the presentation. Should you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them via the chat function. This webinar will be recorded, and we will add it to the webinar to our Alumni Association page. We will also email you the direct link in the coming days. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Hallie Crawford. Many of you know Hallie from previous Vanderbilt alumni career offerings, and we are excited to have her back to lead today's session. Hallie has been a certified career coach, speaker, author, and national career expert since 2002. Her company, Create Your Career Path, is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. She is regularly featured in the media, Forbes, CNN, Money Magazine, and the WSJ. She holds undergraduate and graduate degrees from Vanderbilt University and the University of Illinois. With over 2,500 success stories, her team of coaches and resume writers help professionals find jobs that make them want to jump out of bed in the morning to go to work. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hallie.
Thanks, Kelsey. That was perfect. And even though that is like my elevator speech that we help people find jobs they really enjoy and be successful in those jobs, it still cracks me up every time. Eventually, maybe it won't later on. So thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate that introduction. And we appreciate your time in talking about this, I think, really important topic. I mean, I feel like one of the good things that has come out of the past several years with all of the changes at work, et cetera, is our ability to talk about our mental health professionally and personally a little bit more with less stigma, et cetera, because it's a big deal. Our clients will often tell us more times than I would like to hear that they have had a really difficult experience at work, a boss or an environment that was somewhat toxic to them. And I think we've all had at least one really difficult experience work-wise that we can relate to. So we're going to talk today about how to focus on your mental health at work as much as you possibly can. We're going to give you some tools to assist you with thinking about emotional intelligence and how to just get better at kind of self-care professionally. And I would argue that a lot of the things we're going to talk about today too would relate to your personal life as well. So as Kelsey said, I'm a certified career coach. I'm also a Vandy grad. I hesitate to tell you the year, but I will. I graduated in 95 and have been coaching since 2002. I have a master's degree as well from the University of Illinois. And we pride ourselves in giving people like down to earth advice that's real, tangible, specific, etc. And one of the things I wanted to say first before we dive in today is we're going to give you a lot of different tools, ideas, and suggestions about how to handle your mental health at work. And I would invite you to pick and choose what makes the most sense for you, what resonates the most for you in each of these slides and ideas that we give, because some things may make more sense for one person based on what's going on for them versus someone else. So write down 2 or 3 things that you would like to take away from this. And as a reminder, you will get a copy of the recording. So if you want to implement some of the other things that we're talking about today, you can do that as time goes on. So here are the areas that we want to focus on today to help you mind your mental health more at work. We're going to talk about 5 different things, and then we will have time for Q&A. So external definitions and some of the things that we find our clients will do that kind of trap them into not being as satisfied with work. We'll talk about our ideal career model and how that can help you understand what's working for you and what's not working for you and what areas you may need to make some changes in. We'll talk about your values and how to identify what those are, because those can help you enormously when you're more fulfilled in your work life and personally, honestly, your mental health is just naturally going to be better. And then we'll talk about setting meaningful goals, how to do that in the right way, and boundaries to set up too. So I did want to mention, in addition to the recording, if anyone would like a copy of our slides, you can email us at admin@createyourcareerpath.com. You'll get an email with that information at the end as well. And if you have any questions that you want to ask along the way, don't feel like you have to wait until the very end. We will have that Q&A time then, but I'm happy to pause for a second and answer anything that comes through. And please feel free to share either in the chat or the Q&A box too, if there are any resources that you've leveraged and found to be especially helpful for you, because I feel like the more we can help each other out kind of as a group today, it's just more engaging, more impactful, etc. All right. So there are lots of different reasons why it's really important to focus on our mental health at work. We do not want to be like the man on the screen. We all know, I mean, we spend a lot of time at work, and we all know and understand, as much as we may not want our work life to bleed into our personal life, it just naturally does, because we're human beings and that's kind of how we're built. And there's statistics on this slide about, when we're working longer hours, if we have a difficult boss or difficult situations at work, it really does have an impact on us, and it can impact us physically as well too. So we wanted to go ahead and actually launch our first poll here. And the things we're asking here in this first poll about what's your biggest obstacle to managing your balance at work, your mental health at work, etc. Some of these things relate to this idea of emotional intelligence and how good we are at managing our difficult emotions when we have them, at communicating effectively with our coworkers and our boss. We tend to do better when we're better at that. And when we're good at reading and understanding certain situations, it helps us manage them a little bit better. So if we could launch our first poll, that'd be great. Okay, cool. Let's do just number one for right now. And it's okay if you do both of them at the same time, no big deal, but you'll know what the second one is in just a few slides. And we'll give you a second here to fill this out, because part of why we do this poll is for number one, you to understand, okay, where are my biggest obstacles or issues here? Because once you identify that, you can tackle it, right? You need to know what's going on kind of underneath before you can really understand what needs to be different. And number two, it's to let you know also that you're not alone. These are very common things that people will tell us they struggle with in different ways. And the sooner we can say, it's awareness is that first step, right? The sooner we can say, okay, this is the thing I need the most help with, then you can pick and choose where you need to focus the most of your energy. So we'll give you another second here, and then we'll go ahead and post the results. And then we'll do this second poll again in just a little bit. Okay, cool. And actually, it's totally okay we'll do them both at the same time. But we're going to talk about what this agreement means in just a little bit too. So it looks like we have the majority of people are feeling like not understanding how to communicate effectively. And that's actually perfect, because we're going to talk about that as we progress today too. All right, so let's take a look at the next slide. I think the good news is that you can find greater balance and sense of fulfillment and reward at work. And I also feel like, as part of everything that's gone on during and post COVID, employers really are listening more than ever than they have been to pay attention to what's going on with their employees. They're trying to care more and at least give people a chance to think about this a little bit more. Two things I want you to keep in mind on the bottom right of the slide is that balance, your sense of work-life balance and balance within your work, as well as mental health, it's going to be fluid. And it's also about how you define it. And we're going to talk about how important it is to not compare yourself to other people at your office and even peers outside of work, etc., because that can cause problems and make things difficult. And your maintenance of your mental health at work, it's ongoing. This is not just like, okay, I'm going to check a few boxes and one and done and everything's perfect. So just please know that we're not looking for perfection here. We want to talk today about how to move the needle and get in greater balance over time for you. And sorry about the polls, everybody. I think that we just set them up wonky. And I find that Zoom keeps changing all of their features all the time. I cannot keep up. It's totally fine. So thanks for your patience, everybody, with those. So let's talk about step number one first. So this is something we see a lot of our clients will struggle with. And it's this idea of, okay, how are we defining ourselves as a person and as a professional? And are we defining ourselves in the right way? Or are we caught up in some negative thinking and limiting beliefs? Are there external definitions that, shouldn't be defining us, so to speak? So what happens to us is we understandably get caught up in our daily life, and sometimes we'll end up kind of veering off track from why we took our job in the first place. Or maybe something else happened, like your organization changed hands, sold, and everything changed as a result of that. And so the first thing that we want to think about in the middle of this slide here is we want to think about, okay, how do I define myself as a person and as a professional in terms of, sometimes we'll define ourselves too much based on how much money we make, what our strengths are, like past issues that we've had, etc. And our clients will sometimes tell us that they have had really difficult situations sometimes in the past that has caused them to view themselves differently as a professional. And we want to start to strip those away a little bit. The second thing on this slide is, do you have inherited values, norms, or definitions or priorities from society maybe that don't totally fit for you? And I'll give you a couple of examples here. So we had one client who she was a lawyer. And when we first asked her why she was a lawyer, she said, well, all of my family, they're either doctors or lawyers. Like that's why she chose her career path. And this can be one example. Another example could be, I should be making this amount of money. I'm comparing myself to my peers that graduated at the same time. All of these different things is basically, it's thinking about, how do I define myself as a professional within and outside of my work? And is it working effectively for me or not? And I'm just going to use my other quick example here that's on here where it says never work on vacation in the middle. So one of the kind of rules that I was trying to follow as a professional when I first started my business was, oh, you're not supposed to work on a vacation. You're supposed to totally unplug. And I tried that for a few vacations early on, and it sucked. Like I came back to work and I was flooded and more stressed out than I would have been otherwise. And so I started to find a balance over time, a definition for me that would help me manage my mental health better with work is I do work some while I'm on vacation. Now I take time off. I am only usually checking emails or maybe doing one small project, but that makes me feel better. So anything that may not be working for you, we want you to push that aside. And it could even be how a coworker seems to be defining you or they're judging you or whatever might be going on. So here's the deal is we want to identify and discard those. We want to remove external definitions that we don't want or don't work for us because we want our sense of self and balance and our mental health to come from the inside out versus the outside in. So we want to feel proud of our accomplishments based on inside out type of stuff, not attached to what we have, our salary, et cetera, et cetera. And on the right hand side, as much as we can, which is what we're going to be talking about today, we want to try to set or adjust our schedule and maybe our priorities at work, even if we're doing so within the workday. I know we can't all just make up our own workday, but there are different ways that we can prioritize our work or maybe tackle certain tasks or projects according to those internal definitions instead. And what we find, just by the way, and this is a big thing I wanted to share, is what we find is even when our clients come to us and they feel so overwhelmed and they're really frustrated and maybe having a hard time, small little tiny changes that they start to make have a really big impact on them. So just please know that I feel like with these issues we're discussing today, that small changes really can have a big result and it's a snowball effect. So please know that this isn't like, oh my gosh, you're turning the Titanic around. Taking small action steps in the direction of doing the things we're discussing can actually have a really big impact. So we want at the end of the day your sense of self to come from the inside out because as we said a moment ago, external circumstances can change. We might lose our job, so we might need to move or change. So our first kind of question for you to ask yourself is, and to write down, is do you think you have values, norms, or priorities that are inherited or external that no longer work for you, that you need to kind of shed, if you will? And here are some action steps to help you start to work on this and think about it. Number one, do a quick self-assessment. Do you think you're defining yourself externally anywhere in a bad or negative way, if you will? And instead, you want to think about, how do I want to see myself and view myself as a professional? And how do I define success? That's a great question to journal about. What does success mean to you professionally? Because you can start to get some clues to, okay, I want things to be this way, and what are some of the changes that I'd like to or need to make? The second thing that is a good idea to be thinking about is, do you have any limiting beliefs kind of running around in your head? Meaning, I should be at this place in my career, or I'm supposed to be better at doing this kind of stuff. These can lead to low self-esteem, impact our mental health, not good for us. And we need to pay attention to those negative inner voices that we might have that bring us down. And there's actually a book I'll recommend in the next several slides that can help you with some of these. But just identifying that negative inner thinking in the first place can be a huge difference, because you're shining a light on it and taking away some of its power as a result. And then a third action step that actually we find can be really helpful is, where are you spending your time at work? So if you're not really sure yet what exactly is going on at work that's impacting you negatively or mental health wise, we find if you do a quick time tracker of where you spend your time at work, track your time for like 5 business days, and notice what the themes are there. Where are you spending the majority of your time? When do you feel good? And when do you not feel good? Does it have to do with the time of day or a specific person that you're working with, a client or customer that you're working on their project? Sometimes we know exactly what it is, and I get that, but sometimes we have assumptions about what it is, but we're not totally correct about that. And so we find that just doing a quick time tracker for the next several days can, and also as part of that, tracking how you're feeling, can show you what's possibly going on and identifying some themes that you may need to address. Okay, let's look at step number 2. The second thing that we want you to think about is our ideal career model. So, just really quickly, this is the model that I developed when I first started coaching. And it shows you all of the components to the right career fit or your ideal job. If everything is in the right place with this, you are going to be happy, satisfied, effective at work, all leading to positive mental health. Okay. So, with the ideal career model, the places that we want you to focus the most, and I would even recommend, and we'll show you this on the next slide actually, but like drawing this out as like a wheel with these different components and rating yourself in each of these areas, this can give you a sense of where things may need to be adjusted a little bit. What's going well, what's not going well. And we want you to focus, if you look at this slide here, and I'll just move over here for a second, on fulfillment, whether you're leveraging your strengths effectively at work, and what is your work environment like? And is it supporting you? Is it good for you, or is it not good? So these are the 3 areas, 1, 2, 3, that we want to focus on for our mental health. And we'll talk about each of one of them for just a second. So for example, we want you to be focusing on the tasks, or in charge of tasks and performing tasks and responsibilities that feel like you can be successful and effective at them, and they're fulfilling and rewarding to you, that you enjoy what you do the majority of the day. It's not going to be perfect every single second, but like 80% of your day, you're feeling like you're rocking and rolling, you're effective, you're feeling fulfilled, energized, etc. Okay. Again, not perfection, but for the most part. The second area we want you to take a look is, are you leveraging your strengths? Because what we have found, or studies actually have shown, not us, sorry, studies have shown that if you are not leveraging your strengths at work, the things and doing things that you're naturally good at, you're not going to be fulfilled. And therefore, your mental health is going to be impacted, because you're not going to feel effective. You're going to feel like you're not doing things well. you can't be successful, et cetera, et cetera. So think about those strengths and make sure that you are playing to them on a regular basis. We want you, third, to think about the role that you're in and is it a good fit for you based on your personality type? If you're more introverted, you can't be in a more extroverted type of role. It's going to drain you and make you tired and want to go to bed early. This happened to me before and it impacted my mental health enormously. I'm actually more introverted than extroverted. And I had a job a long time ago that forced me to be really extroverted all the time. And I was exhausted and starting to get depressed. So think about, are you in the right type of role? And also think about too, like the role that you're in as it relates to the people that you work with as well. Are you in the right role as it relates to your personality type? You know, can you be effective? Are you playing to your soft skills and your strengths and that type of thing? And think about your clients as well as your coworkers too. And we'll get to that in a moment. Think about your schedule. Is it ideal for you or not? Are there slight changes you could make to it? Are you never taking a lunch hour or even, I don't know that anybody gets a lunch full hour anymore, but you get what I mean. Are you not taking lunch at all? And you need to do that 3 times a week, even if it's for 20 minutes to just walk around the block for a second. So different things can help you pinpoint action steps as well as what needs to change. The next one we want you to think about is your work culture. Are your values aligned with the organization? Do you feel supported in your role and like your boss has your back? We had a client the other day tell us her boss doesn't have her back at all, and it's miserable and it's really frustrating her, but also impacting her self esteem. So think about the work culture and if it's a good fit for you and if there are any slight adjustments that you can make to it. So, for example, as we start to think about people as the next bullet point, if there are certain coworkers that just you don't mesh well with and don't make you feel good about yourself, try to see if you can limit your exposure to those people. Can you ask for help from your boss? Can you limit your exposure to certain customers or change the way you interact with them, for example, so that it's more effective and not impacting you as negatively? And then the last two things, critically important, are physical space. That impacts our mental health a lot. Do we have an office that makes us feel good, at least to a certain extent? It may not be our favorite place to be, but you've got pictures up, you've got like flowers sometimes, colors. Is there music? You know, what do you need to do to adjust your physical space to support you more and be more of a reflection of you and help you be more effective? And then finally, and we're going to talk about this one more, is your career values. Are you honoring your career values in your work as much as you possibly can on a regular basis? Because this impacts our fulfillment, which therefore impacts our mental health enormously. So, what we would recommend is that I'm sure some of you have seen a life balance wheel like this on the slide here. And this is life balance. Feel free to get the slides if you want to do both life balance and work balance too. So, the left hand side wheel is for life balance. If you feel like some of what's going on for you is work and life kind of together. But within your work, it's a great idea too to overlay these components here listed on the slide and draw a wheel and rate your current state on a scale of 1 to 10. Am I honoring my values? How are the people I work with? And to then say to yourself, okay, if it was, or each one of these were out of 10, what would that be like for me? And what are the action steps that I can take in order to move these forward? Now, there may be some other things that you want to add to these categories, or you might change them a little bit. But the reason why we share these specifically is because these are what we know from working with our clients have the biggest impact on their mental health and their well-being at work, how effective they feel, their self-esteem, everything else. Okay. So we talked about this already, defining your future state, and I wanted to share a couple of action steps though too. It's a great idea using this same wheel to define your future state and journal about it, create a vision board if you're a little bit more like a visual person, to think about, okay, how would I want this to be instead? And what are the things I can control and do something about versus what are the things I can't as much? So I need to find a workaround for those. And what we find to help our clients get into a better kind of headspace, some of our clients will do, and we'll take a look at the list here. Some of our clients will have a playlist for when they have to work on tasks that's not their favorite thing to do, or when they're not feeling as good or up or a little kind of laggy during the day. We highly recommend body movement, getting out, walk around the block of your building, not just when you're feeling frustrated, but make sure you get outside every single day for part of the day for even 5 minutes. Like just getting a different perspective and being in a different location can help you feel a little bit better and get perspective on whatever's going on for you. Taking breaks, like we said. And we also find that after you've journaled about your schedule for 5 days, give or take, it's a great idea to be thinking about, okay, what are the best days to work on certain tasks for me? And we realize that you may not have complete control over that. But if you've got some wiggle room within your week, work on the things, for example, at the very beginning of the week that are the hardest when you're the most fresh, save the other things till the end of the week. Adjust and schedule your tasks based on the time of day that you're at your best. So try to be, it's almost like an efficiency or operations expert with your own work and how you manage it, because this can make a big difference on how you approach things and not just your effectiveness, but how you feel as well. Another suggestion, and this is something we suggest to a lot of our clients, and I know it's the same guy on the slide, but it's a different idea here, is if you are struggling with someone in particular, if part of what's going on for you mental health at work wise is a struggle or difficulty or a rub with a coworker, etc., can you sit down with them at some point in the next several weeks and just have an open conversation about how can we work together a little bit more effectively and create some kind of agreement? And it can be formal conversation or informal conversation. Just depends on the situation and what's best for you. But what we find is we'll teach our clients to create agreements with people, especially those that they may not work with quite as effectively because you have different personality types or styles or whatever it is. If you actually talk for a few minutes about how often you meet, how you communicate, how you handle conflict, those types of things, and kind of get it out on the table, that can help you deal with those things more effectively. You may have heard of this concept before of a team charter. And this is where teams and groups of people, before they start on a project, ideally, will make sure that they're all on the same page about what are our goals, what are the roles that we're playing on this team and on this project, what are we trying to achieve, what are the possible obstacles we might face, how are we going to handle our meetings, our communication, etc. You can do the same thing with your coworkers, whether it's formal or informal, but trying to have these more direct, open conversations about what's going on at work when you're having a conflict or a challenge, etc., can help you be more confident as a professional and can help get some things out on the table so that you both can be more effective too. And if you feel like you need a third party to be there to help you navigate this and moderate it, you could ask your boss if that's appropriate. You could ask someone from HR, but just at least put this kind of nugget in the back of your mind about thinking about and talking about how you work together versus just doing the work all day, every day. Taking that 10,000-foot view can help you be more effective in how you manage everything that can help with your mental health as well. All right, let's take a look at step number 3 on this next slide. And this is about focusing on fulfillment. And I don't want to say or give the impression today that if you solely focus on fulfillment and that's it, your mental health at work is going to be perfect. It helps a lot and it can make a big difference. But we want you to combine it with all of these other things like setting boundaries, setting the right schedule if you can, etc., that we've talked about today. But the reason why we bring up fulfillment is it can make a really big difference. What we find with our clients is that if they are in a job and they're able to make adjustments with their current position, let's say, or if they have to find something new, fine. but that the good parts about what they're doing so far outweigh those other parts that they don't like as much, not just in terms of how much time they spend on them, but the sense of reward it gives them. It makes a huge difference in their mental health and sense of things. And we want you to think about, ideally, what your career values are, because our career values are guideposts to fulfillment in terms of our professional life. So it's a great idea as part of your exercises here in action steps to identify like 3 to 5 personal and career values for yourself. And I'll explain how we do this and what this means here in just a second. Um, we like for people to think about their personal values as well, because if you can honor those more in your personal life too, that's going to impact your mental health outside of work as well. Your values basically are things that have deep meaning for you, that are, it's almost like priorities, but not just priorities. It's bigger than that. When you work on that type of project or task, for example, or the mission of your organization you really believe in, for example, that's and gives you that kind of a sense of fulfillment or passion or sense of accomplishment and enthusiasm. That means that some of your values are being honored. Okay. And one of the ways, if you take a look at the slide, we have people identify their values is to think about a peak experience in their life. And what we mean by that is it could be a moment of time, it could be a period of time, but it was a time in their life when they just felt great. Things were rocking and rolling. They were on top of the world. We've had lots of different examples. Some people will say a trip overseas. Other people will say when I was the editor of my high school yearbook. Other people will say when I graduated from college. So it doesn't matter what the experience is. What we want you to do is journal about it and write about it for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to take that long, and look at and think about the what was cool about that experience for you. It's not about the details of it. Well, I was here and I graduated from here, etc. It's more about why was that so meaningful for me and what made me feel like lit up inside. Writing about that can give you clues to your values. Okay. Um, and we'll talk about the action steps in a minute. I'm going to give you a quick example. So we could have two people, let's say their peak experiences are the same. It could be, let's say, a trip out to California out west or something. Um, but the way that person number one describes why that was a peak experience for them, they might be talking about the logistics, where they were going to stay, the planning, etc. Their values have something to do with logistics, operations, like planning, efficiency, those types of things, like making things work, right? Versus a second person, same trip, may be talking more about the food, where they want to eat, like the museums that they want to see, the people that they want to spend time with and hang out with. Their values have more to do with that experience. Maybe it's relationships and people, maybe it's art and creativity. So you can see how even if two people have the same peak experience, when they start to describe it and you really focus in on what was especially cool about that for you, you can define what some of your values are. And action steps on this slide is once you start to track your time and get a sense of where you're spending your time, are you honoring your values on a regular enough basis? And is it possible for you to do so where you are? If it's not possible, I would suggest that you try to do so in the next few months. And then it's, you may need to think, okay, do I need to make a course correction here and shift or change gears with my job? Identify activities and tasks inside, but also outside of work to honor your values more. And finally, adjust your schedule if it's possible. And what I mean by this is even just the way you perform some of your tasks. This is a really silly one, but I'm going to use it. I'm the type of person, like, I love going to office supply stores because there's all these post-its and like things you can do to organize and that type of thing. And I actually feel more fulfilled. I might be working on the same thing, but if I'm using one of my cool pens or I've got these different things or like a creative looking notebook, like that honors some of my values and I'm actually more motivated. It makes me feel better. So this is where we go back to those small changes can actually have really big results in your mental health and have you be more fulfilled. Another way to identify values is to think about your childhood dreams, your interests, your passions. The reason why there's a mermaid on this slide is as a kid, I grew up in Florida. I wanted to be a mermaid at Weeki Wachee. I thought that was so cool. They're actually in that childhood dream, even though that was not the most practical career path for me to pursue, there's evidence of my values even as an adult in that. So think about the topics that you're drawn to when you read, watch TV. What are your hobbies outside of work? And why do you love those and why are you drawn to them? Because that can give you clues to some of your possible values. Okay. So even if your hobbies aren't the right career path to pursue, there could be elements of those that you want to try to infuse into your work life, like a little bit more creativity, a little bit more art and design, or a little bit more organization or working with numbers. Whatever it is that you get excited about, those are clues to your values too. As part of step number 3 and fulfillment with our mental health too, some things that can help us, because I think when we start to get in a bad place at work, we start to focus mostly on the negative versus focusing on the positive. Now, I'm not saying gloss over the negative stuff and don't do anything about it, but something that's helped our clients is if we have them do for a couple of weeks, like a daily check in at the end of the day. How did things go today? And review their accomplishments for the day. For certain people, that's exactly the right thing to do because it helps them adjust their mindset to a better spot. For some people, they feel like part of the problem or difficulty with my mental health at work is I'm working remotely or hybrid, or I don't get to see people enough. So, is socializing something that you need to work on a little bit more and make a commitment to? Okay, I'm going to meet up with a friend for coffee or lunch every single week, or go with a coworker or something like that. And then another thing that you can do, action step wise, if you feel like your negative thinking is part of what's going on, you've got this negative thinking going on, negative beliefs, etc., and it's really overwhelming you, journaling about that a little bit more too, to see kind of what's going on for you can be really, really helpful. And I mentioned this earlier. We really like this book, Taming Your Gremlin. It's Rick Carson and it's on Amazon. It's really affordable. This helps you enormously with, he calls negative thinking and beliefs gremlins and how to work on those. This book, our clients love it because it's short and sweet. It's a simple process, easy read, and it helps you get more effective with managing any negative thoughts that are going on in your head, getting past them, and focusing on the things that you really need to focus on. So, highly recommend this book. You can find it on Amazon, I'm sure other places too. So related to this fulfillment piece and focusing on how can I feel more full at work and therefore satisfied, et cetera. Do I need to eat healthier because that makes me feel better? Is it, affirmations? Do I need to write a few affirmations because negative thinking is part of the difficulty? For some people, they don't take enough breaks. And so they'll set timers on their phone. I need to take at least 3 breaks in a given day. Adjust your workspace, et cetera. Like we said earlier with exercise, you don't have to go run a marathon at lunch, but just getting outside in nature for even 5 minutes can help adjust your perspective. And if you're having a really difficult time with a lot of things at work, and for example, if you've tried some of the things that we're talking about today, go get some help with this, whether it's a therapist, an accountability partner that can help you walk through some of these action steps. Therapy is just so much more accessible these days that I think, like with telehealth, et cetera, definitely something that you want to consider if these issues you feel like are a little bit deeper. And for example, HR isn't as helpful as you would like. Let's talk about step number 4, and then we'll start to move to our Q&A here in just a few minutes. Ideally, to get into a better mental space at work, when you're setting your professional goals, especially like when you have your performance review or you're thinking about your own goals too, don't just have those ones that your boss tells you or the things that they feel like you need to be working on. Set your own set of goals too professionally that align with these pieces of the career model. What would be really fulfilling for you? Are certain types of projects more rewarding and fulfilling, or do you really enjoy working with certain types of clients and customers and you want to ask to be able to work more with them? Tasks in terms of enjoyment and responsibilities, like what are the things that you want to work on and do the most? Are you leveraging your strengths? How can you play to those more? Is there education that you would like to get because it would make you feel more confident in your role, like obtaining a certification, or the same thing with work experience? And then we've already talked about personality and work environment, but you need to have a role or be in a place that the culture supports you as much as possible. And at the very least, it doesn't tear you down and you're in the right role for your personality type, working with the right people, etc. The work environment we just said, and compensation, to feel like you're adequately being compensated and valued. What is going to be best for you in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, compensation wise? So step number 4, as part of this with the model, is it's a really good idea actually to assess your current career path and your current job. Rank on a scale of 1 to 10 where your career is now in each one of these areas, and where are the inconsistencies that may be causing problems for you that you can start to work on and see if you can make some adjustments over time. I always wanted to, or I always want to, sorry, offer a free consult if you feel like you need more help with this, because I know some of this can be really overwhelming. And also that some people's situations are more unique and specific than others. If you'd like to learn more about our coaching services, feel free to reach out. This is the same email address as the one to get the slides. We do give a discount for Vanderbilt alum. Happy to chat with you. Just email us at admin@createyourcareerpath.com. As part of setting your goals, like we just said, if you can start to create some mental health goals for yourself as part of your professional goals, this will help you enormously. You don't have to share them with anybody, but if you can attach those goals to your values as much as possible. So think about your values and say, okay, this is something I want to do more frequently because it will honor my value and I'm going to feel more fulfilled. That is even better. You're going to be more likely to work towards that value. It's going to motivate you more, or you will be more motivated, I should say, and it's going to help boost your mental health. Attach your goals to your values and the model, like we just said, and make sure that you're adding to your professional goals and your longer term strategic career plan. And again, you don't have to share this with anybody or your boss, or if you've got a great boss, okay, fine, go ahead and do so. But add this as part of what you need to do professionally. So, for example, we had a client we were working with yesterday, actually, and one of the things that impacts her mental health at work is she gets pulled in all these different directions, and she's constantly having to work with or kind of cover for her boss, which gets exhausting at the end of the day. We started to put some things in place for her to be able to give her a break, take some time away for a minute during her day, close her door, but also organize herself before her boss even comes in so that she knows how to manage him a little bit better from the get-go. So there are things that you can do to help. She feels a lot more kind of balanced and centered as a result of doing these things. And these were things she was able to do within her control, which is great. Step number 5, last but absolutely not least, is for your mental health, set some boundaries. Decide what your personal limits need to be about when you're checking your phone, your work email, etc., how you're going to handle your vacation. Decide if you need to like download the Calm app. There's so many other great apps there. If you need to meditate a little bit during the day to kind of get grounded and centered. I used to have a boss. It was great. She would be like, if you need a mental health day, take it. And you don't have to be physically sick. Like, it's okay if it's more of a mental health day. Identify when you're at your best. When are you at your best during the course of your day and your week? Work on those tasks that are harder for you, maybe less fulfilling or rewarding, whatever makes sense for your situation. As part of boundaries, if sometimes you need to close your office door and you need to let people know I've got to do that in order to focus or whatever, that may be something you need to start paying attention to and working on. If someone interrupts you all the time, like the client we were just talking about, having a way to politely but firmly say, I can't talk right now. I apologize. Can we talk at the end of the day, today or tomorrow? Like setting limits for yourself so people aren't just railroading you is really, really important. Do you need to sometimes ask for an adjustment and a deadline and say, look, I've got these 5 things, talking to your boss about which is the highest priority. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need to sort this out. Starting your day at the beginning of your day with mindfulness and positive thinking. That is always better than trying to rein it back in later on. If you can start it out as often as possible, it's not going to be all the time, but in the right headspace and have a morning routine for yourself, that makes a huge difference in terms of the rest of your day. And sometimes, honestly, the last two things on the right hand side here is just slow down. Sometimes I think we're so busy at work and it's like, okay, well, I just have to throw myself into this because I have to get it all done. Well, we know how that turns out. Half the time, because you're so frantic and stressed, you're not even going to do a good job anyway. So, would it make more sense to like step outside for 2 minutes and say, I need to deep breathe here, figure out how we need to tackle this, or I need to call a friend and ask them their perspective or whatever it is and talk it out a little bit. Okay. So, with your boundaries, just as a side note and reminder on the right hand side, some of those boundaries you may be communicating to others, like, I really need to have this focused time. Is it okay that I close my door for an hour at 11 or whatever it is? And some you may not. It just depends on what makes the most sense. But you also don't want to just start doing things differently and it's going to freak people out and be hard and difficult on you as a result, too. And finally, we talked about this a little bit already, but I just wanted to reiterate whether it's the support of a therapist or friend or family member or coworker, whatever is best, find someone to help hold you accountable for working on this in the next month. Get an accountability partner, whether it's a mentor, friends, family, or someone else. Leverage technology to help you with this. A time tracking app that helps you track your time better and forces you to take breaks. The Calm app, like we said. And then on here are two places to get additional support if you feel like you need it. But just don't be afraid to ask for help in any way, shape, or form. And when you ask for help, be clear about what you need assistance with, how they can support and help you, and like create an agreement a little bit. Like, is it okay if I check in with you, once a day just to see how things are going and report to you on my action steps or whatever it is? You might do that with your partner. All right, so we're at our time for Q&A here, and I just wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for it. Like I said at the beginning, if you could write down two things that you will take, one or two things in the next week, action step wise, that you will take on, that would be fantastic. And then we can add more to it if needed. But remember what I said at the beginning, these small action steps can actually make a really big difference. And even just being here today, starting to think about the things we're talking about, fulfillment, your values, etc., can make a huge difference in your perspective and how you choose and where you choose to spend your time and how you approach your tasks. It's about, at the end of the day, I think being more mindful instead of just plowing into work like I think we normally do when we get into the office because there's a lot to be done, deadlines, etc. So it could be anything, and please feel free to share in the Q&A or in the chat what your action steps are. We'd love to hear them. Action step could be reviewing the ideal career model. It could be identifying your values. And we will give it several minutes too for people to ask questions also, because I know that sometimes it takes a moment for people to think of their questions. If you're more introverted like I am, I usually think of my questions like 2 days later and I'm like, oh, would have been the best question. So take your time with this. And just by the way, too, if you think of a question later on, hold on to my email. I'm happy to respond to it later if you think of something later on, because we know this is a kind of an ongoing process too. All right, so we've got one question to start out with, which is great. How long will it take me to improve my work-life balance and my emotional intelligence? What if my coworker doesn't want to create an agreement? This is such a good one. So thanks for asking. And here's what I would say is when you're working towards these type of goals and trying to be more grounded, balanced, centered, and therefore emotionally intelligent at work, you want to give yourself a couple of months. And I don't say that to be depressing, like it's going to take so long, but normally they say that it takes about 90 days to develop a new habit. So it can take some time here. That doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen between now and then. You will be making progress, but give yourself a couple of months to play around with some of the tools that we've talked about. A second question related to what we were talking about earlier. What if my coworker doesn't want to create an agreement? This is a really good one. So remember how we were saying the agreement can be formal or informal. So in a way, you can almost, I'll say two things as a way to approach this. In a way, you almost can like just ask them questions that are open-ended, and they're agreeing to things like, okay, let's meet on these days instead or whatever, without you guys writing anything down. That it doesn't have to necessarily be that formal. It could just be that you're at least having a few quick conversations about how you can, when do you want to meet? How should we communicate effectively, et cetera, et cetera. And if it's to the point where it's really, really difficult and the person is being, for lack of a better word, belligerent, if you need to bring in your boss or your someone from HR, that's a last resort, but sometimes it is something that you need to do to get that third party kind of assistance with it. And that person may be able to help navigate kind of the touchy situations, what you need to do differently, and get the other person to kind of participate in the process too. So those are good as well. By the way, when you're looking up and thinking about emotional intelligence and those types of things, everything that we talked about today will help support greater emotional intelligence for you, communicating with others, but also with that self-care. But if you Google emotional intelligence and look up on Amazon, there's a good book, Emotional Intelligence at Work by Daniel Goleman. And that is a really good book that can help you with specific things related to increasing your emotional intelligence there too. We like that one, as well as the Gremlin book as well. All right, we'll give it another moment just in case there are other questions. Let us know if you want to know anything or you have any resources that you want to share before we go. And Kate, before we go too, I don't know if we want to announce, or it might be Kelsey, sorry, what the next program is and all of that stuff too. So we'll do that before we go as well. All right. Well, if you think of other questions, let us know. Hopefully, we've answered all of them, and that's a good thing. Kelsey, any final kind of comments that you want to make before we head out for today?
Yeah, I just want to thank you so much to Hallie for the wonderful tips to manage our mental health at the workplace. Also, thank you to all who attended today. We really appreciate you being on here. And we look forward to seeing you again at Hallie's next webinar, which is on April 25th. And yeah, thanks again to everyone. And please complete the post-event survey in the chat. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Good luck.